It's time for your next favorite episode of the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene.
So, Jolene, I gotta ask you a question. What is the point of this? What we're doing here? Like, what does it mean? Really, anything?
Does it mean anything? Does it even matter?
Does it even matter? Like, is there really a why?
Yeah.
Why?
It doesn't. It doesn't really matter.
Everything's pointless.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, we wrapped that up.
That's your next favorite episode of the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene.
I'm Jason, by the way.
I'm Jolene.
All right. That's that.
That is what we're talking about today, folks. Why the fuck are we doing what we're doing?
Why do we get up in the morning? What is the point of this? Does it mean anything?
Because the rats in the cage got to do something between 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. So how do you utilize that time?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that I think it kind of ties into what we talked about last week in terms of belief and truth.
Isn't that a Smashing Pumpkins song?
That is, yeah. Rats
in a cage.
Despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. That's a great song. Ooh. That's one of their only songs of theirs I like, actually.
Okay. Back to the point, folks.
We're going to tackle the idea of meaning, and that really, in the end, everything is basically meaningless. We are the ones who attach a purpose or meaning to it as a way to kind of, like Jolene said, we got to do something from the time we wake up to the time that we go to sleep. Mm-hmm. Now, do you agree with that? Disagree with that? Is there a freedom in realizing maybe there isn't any point to anything?
Yeah.
Or do we need it
to
kind of keep going?
Yeah. If we reflect back on last week's episode, this is a big part of who tells us what we need to do. Like, what is that truth, that fact, that influence, all those things. You know, as you're saying these things, I'm like, well, yeah, if we want a house to live in, we got to make money, and then we have to pay property taxes because something's in control saying these things need to happen.
Yeah.
But if you were to truly just go and self-resource off the grid, you could survive. However, you would survive outside the masses, and you would lack privilege and accessibility to things you may need, which might be education, a formal, traditional, mainstream education, I should say, because there's a lot of ways we can educate free-range children. It may be healthcare. It may be, different things like that. So you would, if you were not a tax-paying citizen or living within certain limits of something, you may not receive the benefit of that.
But does that matter?
Exactly.
Because we as a cult, as people, existed outside of that norm
for years.
Thousands of years. Yeah. Tens of thousands of years.
So who made that stuff matter?
Yeah. And then why did we all just go, okay?
Yeah.
There's a moment of silence, folks, because that's something I think we need to pause and ask ourselves from time to time. Because so often, you do what you're told. You grow up, you go to school. Griffin's like, why do I have to go to school? Well, because, and we put this argument forward.
Apparently, parents can get put in jail if you don't.
Well, that's what we basically in the end said. We could go to jail if we don't send you to school, so go the fuck to school. But again, who said that you should go to jail as a parent for not making your kid go to school?
Colonization said that.
Right? Exactly. So, and then you get your education so that you can get a job so that you can feed the system and support yourself and buy your house. And then you should get married, and then you should have kids. And then you work till you're a certain age, government designated, and then you retire, and then you die 20 years later. And that's life. That's the life that you're told. If you're lucky.
Yeah.
Many people die very shortly after retirement because they suddenly don't have any purpose in life.
Yeah, or they overworked and kept themselves at this functioning capacity while there were demands of them. And once there was no demands, they were like, I am out.
I'm done. Peace out. Done.
Oh, it's funny. As you were saying all that, I'm looking at this little file thing on your computer in front of me, and it was like history. The word popped out to me. And you were like, because why? Why do we have to do this? And it was like history. And then there's a thing that says properties. And then there's a thing that says easy access. And it's true. Like, I honestly think evolution is here like we as a civilization, we're here to try and make things easier. If you look at the industrialization, we've talked a lot about all of this stuff and how each generation, we're essentially trying to do things easier. Laundry nowadays looks very different than it did 100 years ago.
Big time. Big time.
Yeah. However, who deemed that important or necessary? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what did all of that do? And how much of this is intentional and how much of this is like, you know what? This is just the fate of our existence in the years that we're here. I don't know, you know? And it's beautiful to be able to step back and go, does this really fucking matter? And I think all of us can benefit from doing that to a certain point. I think when we get to that place of nothingness, like really, like, you know, Buddhist philosophy kind of comes to mind for me. That's a hard thing to achieve while we are standing here in a home, in certain structures with payment systems of this and that. It's really hard to get to a state of nothingness. You would have to really substantially change your life. Again, become the man in the woods or whatever to fully achieve that. But how can we achieve parts of that in our life that bring back simplicity, that bring back concepts of minimalism, that bring back more self-awareness, less options to distract and dilute our knowing, our version of the truth, whatever that be, right? This is where literally every day that we come up across maybe that schedule pressure or the demands of there's so many of these things that need to be done today, including I really wanted to make this special dinner, so I'll have to get home at a certain time. At what point do we give ourselves permission to be like, but does it really matter? Does it matter that today is the day that we do that? We may choose, yes, today that matters because of this, but we may choose, no, it doesn't matter at all. As long as somebody has food in their body, fueling them to make it through to the next day, maybe that's all that matters right now.
Yeah. And I think we talked last week about knowing your values. And if you know what your core values are, that helps determine your beliefs in a way and your ability to not be, you know, caught up in the whole having to argue your point. And I think when it comes to, we all need some sort of purpose. People who just have none, who just kind of flounder, generally their mental health deteriorates, their physical health deteriorates. So we are all here to do something, right? Marcus Aurelius would always say, like, he'd have arguments with himself in the morning that he didn't want to get out of bed, you know, and he'd be like, well, get up, just get up. No, it's nice and comfortable here. And it's like, well, what? You were made to be comfortable? You were made to lay in bed all day? You have a purpose as a human being to get out there and do that. And that's why he'd get up and then go and, you know, do his thing. Of course, he was the emperor of Rome, so he had a lot of responsibilities at the same time. But that was thrust upon him by circumstance. So, but we do all, Jolene, you have a reason for, you know, you have your purpose. I have mine. We've designated, I think, these purposes upon ourselves in order to give life meaning as a motivation to do them.
Yeah.
Right?
Again, I'm looking at this screen and it's like copy path, paste shortcut. Like every time we come back to do things in this life, it's like copy the path, but paste the shortcut, right? How do we get there quicker, sooner, faster, whatever? Yeah. That's really funny. And you know, that is a piece. We have to look at like what drives human behavior. Again, we are rats in a cage. We study human behavior. We study biology. We study intrinsic patterns versus external motivations all the time in everything we do. We do it in the marketing world. We do it in industry. We do it in all these places. That is a perpetual movement forward. We're here to evolve. The world spins every fucking day. You can't stand still. We can't stand still. We are a collection of moving molecules that do not stop moving to create a solid mass. We are constantly, the world around us is constantly in a state of movement to exist. Yeah. So that's also what we have to recognize about this natural pattern and existence that we are in, right? Yep. So we're in the flow of that. So recognizing, okay, maybe it's about where is the goalpost? And I think lots of people get to this place in life. You and I have talked about that a lot on our entrepreneurial, kind of journeys. Yes, there is a means to a need, finance-wise, but a lot of it is around alignment and a lot of it's around purpose. And then there's times in people's life where they stop achieving one goalpost and they switch. And this is where does that really matter? Now we switch what the meaning is. I want more experiences and less things. Okay, well, that's a switch in the goalpost, right? Looking at that sign over there, more love inside, right? How do we have more love? How do we have more joy in our experiences instead of maybe acquiring the things we need in life in order to get us there? Right?
Yeah.
And there is a set of stages. In order for us to truly feel peaceful and safe and all of that in the world we live right now, we need a bit of security in terms of, do I have a home to wake up in every day? Do I have security? Do I have control over how my basic needs are being met? If we don't have that, it could be harder to find the joy and the love inside. You just have to resource it a different way, right? Yeah. So those are all pieces to look at in terms of like, does this really matter? It might not when the goalpost is in a certain direction, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's about switching the goalpost, right? Yeah. So what is the detriment? So we like, those are helpful things because it can really take pressure off. It can take expectation off. It can really help us shift like what matters. I think of that book, like Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, right? It's like those small fucking details don't matter. I talk to people about this all the time in their sessions when they're complaining about the status of their relationship. And I'm like, I have said to so many people, I'm like, you don't have a basis of kindness, friendship, and respect. Kindness, friendship, respect. Kindness, friendship, respect. You are having all of these problems because you innately lack respect for each other. Because if you respected your partner, you wouldn't have done this, or you wouldn't have responded that way, or this or that. Yes, we all have our wounds and this and that. But most of the time, people will look at me and be like, I know. And I know because I've been there, right? And when you have those pillars in scenarios of your life, you naturally don't sweat the small stuff, right?
Exactly, yeah.
They don't matter. So when we go back to like, when are all these small things mattering to us? What are those pillars we're missing? What's the foundation? What's the basis? It could be safety, security, basic needs.
Yep.
It could be whatever. It could be like a lack of alignment or whatever those things be. But like usually when we are so destabilized by the little things, right, that don't really matter, it's because something bigger that matters isn't being addressed.
Yes,
right?
I agree with that.
So that's a beautiful way of switching. Like, does this even matter? Like, zoom out. What is the fucking issue? But now, what's the detriment of acquiring that belief of, well, nothing really matters. What's the point?
Yeah.
Where is that harmful?
Well, I think that is very harmful in that you can develop a very nihilistic view of things, and that's not a very good headspace to have been in, because I've been in it. So your life becomes dark. You can become suddenly unmotivated to do anything. Suicidal even. Why bother?
Why is any pain worth enduring?
Yeah.
Why is any effort worth enduring? Why is any joy worth enduring?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? But people get to that. Like, I guess I read somewhere that, like Gen Z won't date. They've got the highest ratio of people who do not engage in like coupling activities.
Wow.
Because it makes them too anxious and there's too much uncertainty.
Wow.
The whole generation that just can't handle that.
I'm so sorry for them.
But
what generation is that?
Gen Z. So that would be, they're now in like their 20s.
Oh, okay.
Right? They'd be in like their late teens to 20s. But could you like really? You can't handle it? Like, you know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, different versions of nervous system.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And oh my God.
So they're like, what's the point?
Yeah. Well,
because it feels bad and it
well,
makes you
and I
uncomfortable.
wonder too, if there's less importance on the evolutionary need of reproduction. I think that we couple due to biological and power related needs. So
For sure.
a woman had to couple with a man if she wanted to essentially have value in life, be recognized, have any kind of security, safety, future, anything, right? Like if you were a woman, you needed a man. We don't need that as much now. So there might not be as much evolutionary need to survive and reproduce, which is what drives coupledom. So
For sure.
What's the point? It would need to be for joy. It would need to be for, evolution of love and acceptance and partnership and different things. So
Well, and as
you'd
much
have to find that next level of what's the point.
what's the point? And as people, we are, even anti-social me is like we are wired for human contact of some way, shape, or form, right? And so it's just within us. So, and what's happening to this generation is because so much of their interaction isn't even face to face anymore.
Or with real people.
They're
AI
losing
bots and shit.
They're losing touch with that. They just don't feel they need it, but they do. It's just being presented artificially, but that can never take the place of the real thing. Yeah, that AI companion, that's scary.
Yeah, it's no different than our nutrients no longer coming from food because it's not it's not in our soil anymore the way it used to be. So now we have to supplement our nutrients. Natural oxytocin and bonding chemicals aren't organically created through physical contact and connection that way. Eye contact can create that, right? They're getting it through words and screen contact. So it's like an artificial form of that neurochemical response.
Without getting all the real, true benefits of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Ah.
Why does it even matter?
So for me, and this is how I've approached it, I've asked what's the point, but not of the real thing, of the artificial thing.
Oh.
What is the point then of even being on social media and interacting through stuff? I've always not, been wired that way, but I've been doing even less and less of that artificial contact now.
What's the point? Your computer's telling me easy access, copy path, paste shortcut.
Right.
That is a pin to quick access right there. Look at we are programmed and we have even this little computer screen and we're in the file section there, guys. Literally is it's an example of what we are trying to do in life, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Easy access.
And as a species, we keep looking for the easiest way to do it.
Yeah. And it's kind of and it's funny because we do fill our days with things that in the end, do they really matter? Well, again, how do we spend our time? How do we organize what that looks like? How do we gain experiences and tend to the things that we need during those times, like moving our body, fueling our social appetite, feeling productive, driven, getting the access points, all of that. I guess that's why we're walking through the motions of the things that we're doing on the daily, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm very much looking forward later today to playing a new video game.
Cool.
Called South of Midnight. Do I need to? No. Is there a real point to doing it? It's a distraction. It's a break, but we need that.
Yeah.
So I think what it comes down to, even if things have no meaning, it's important to find some meaning to it.
Yeah. For you, the intentional meaning is enjoyment.
Enjoyment.
Yeah.
Plus, we've got to have some of that.
Yeah.
The work that I do now is more aligned with my values and what I've always wanted to do as opposed to something that I have to do. But I've already achieved the security that comes from putting in the time to do all the other things to acquire the home and the access to food and all that.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Right. And even just a timing thing of would you have done this when your son was young and in the hospital? And
couldn't have done it. No.
That's when that stability, for myself, mat leaves were necessary
in
my government job. And, so yeah, it's interesting to look at some of those things and, where we can place too much meaning in things is where, I think that becomes our spiritual belief. I think that becomes our spirituality in terms of why things matter. And that becomes almost like a little hug to our heart. And it's a little validation of why we do what we do, right? So if we lack that, we might lack purpose, belonging, self-awareness, whatever those things be. Maybe it's just the difference between having a room and having a room that's been decorated with pictures and furniture and all of those things. How do you make that space more usable? And maybe that's what we're doing in our life with all these things. But how do you have too much stuff and too many things? That might be when we place too much meaning on stuff. And I see people do this on their healing journeys quite a bit. And all of a sudden everything becomes something. And I mean, I'm just as guilty as this because my head just sees these patterns everywhere, right? So I'm like, oh yeah. And sometimes I love it when it's like, maybe you don't have to pick that apart. Maybe you just have to be in it, experience it, and literally just move on. Let it be what it is, right? It's a bag of garbage. I always tell people, once you've put it in the kitchen garbage, tie the bag and take it out to the street. You don't open that bag up and go through it again once it's on the street. You just don't. And some things in life are that. They're the bag of garbage that gets experienced, thrown out, and that's it. You never revisit it again, right?
Yeah.
Because there's things that happen and lots of times it has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, I agree. There's sort of, because I'm like you, like I see things in a certain way, and that's where I kind of you can see patterns and derive a little bit of spiritual meaning from things. But I think it can be taken to the extreme.
Yeah.
And I think when you are doing especially counseling, you can get really caught up in that. We've talked about this before. You almost become narcissistic in your view of yourself. It's a bad word, but because you're working on yourself, so you're trying to get through things. But there's a point when you need to stop,
or be less like, don't own it as yours.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I've told people like, oh yeah, I'm sure this has nothing to do with you anymore. Like, you're already at the intersection and you're waiting for the other 4 people to make it to the intersection so you can all turn in the same direction now.
Exactly.
Like, you are honestly in the waiting room. So just chill. Like, this isn't about how much more work you need to do. This isn't about this, like, the other people or your person or whatever that opportunity is in life. Like, it's not here yet. It's not ready. So this isn't a reflection of you right now. And
just find a little peace.
Those are cool places to be. A lot of people felt that way in this last, like in March, and things have kind of started. The doors opened in April here, and anyone who wants to go back, this time last year we had our astrological sessions with Brittany, where we learned a lot about what that astrological New Year's is, what Aries season is. It's very fast and furious and action driven and focused, and people might have noticed a bit of that. We also get that seasonally, right?
Yeah.
So we will we will try to utilize, I think, time and resources and people and experiences as best possible to get what we need from it. And I think that that's an evolutionary skill, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you were to really look back to when maybe we were living on the land in ungoverned kind of places, you did have to utilize. You did have to, like, maybe grab that plant that you weren't sure if you needed it yet, but you knew you'd need it at some point. You'd have to be aware of, like, oh, there's a storm coming in. Maybe we should head back now to camp. You did have to place meaning to things, but it was for survival. So maybe look at yourself and be like, how much of this is truly for survival?
Yeah, no, true. Exactly.
I don't know,
I think
right?
that's a really good way to look at it. Like, is this necessary or not?
Yeah. And again, what is your definition of survival? Because we can actually create so many more things that we think we need to survive on, or we need these things to survive, right? When we talked about, was it minimalism or was it privilege of some sort? And how we talked about, like, the doctors that were making like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we're like, oh, we can't make monthly payments. So it was like, well, you've got these cars, you've got this house,
you got the nanny, you've got
again, like, if you want to maintain where you're living, but you could change your situation and still be thriving. Yeah. Right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that in various different aspects of our life. It's just about, where we're placing ourselves.
Yeah.
Where we're placing ourselves. Yeah. But does it matter?
In the end, maybe it doesn't.
Isn't that a song? In the end, does it really matter?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is that Linkin Park?
I think it was, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Remind us to post it with that song.
Yes, with that song.
Yeah, right? Because it's true. And I think, we're not creating a cynical kind of
now it's stuck in my head,
here,
sorry.
Right?
It's stuck in my head.
We've been tossing out Smashing Pumpkins, Linkin Park, right? But, and actually, that's a really cool thing. I love where bands, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but where bands really, like, they get to share truth and influence and things like that. And if you were to actually look at a lot of lyrics of songs, like, they're deep, man. They are meant to move the masses. I really believe that some of these artists they were here with just as many gifts as, like, religious or political leaders were in terms of getting messages out to the masses,
Oh, for sure. It's kind of an example. There's a Police song back from the 80s, like, I can't live without her, basically. I think is the title. And it was really popular because it was like bouncy and all this. And it sounded very cheery, but if you listen to the lyrics, the point of the song is, I can't live without her, so I'm going to kill myself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
so this poppy 80s song that just had this really dark slant to it. But that's quite often, that's talking about meaning. What's the point? Well, now that, you've held on to love so hard that when you lose that, it's like, well, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah.
Instead
so
of,
and that's no different than the goalposts we have in life, right? Is that the career? Is that the money? Is that, in the end, we talk about that so much in these eulogies and on your deathbed. Are you talking about all the things you accomplished or the people that you love?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what matters, right? Really looking at, what truly matters in your life, what you perceive to matter, because that's the other thing. What's perception of others, right?
Mm-hmm.
What matters to us might be what others perceive.
Yep.
Right? Oh, I want this to be viewed from the outside a certain way, right?
And does that matter?
Well, if that becomes a basis of self-security, confidence, acceptance, belonging, like go back to our belonging episodes, how much am I loved and accepted by others? That may feel like a survival need for somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And the
right?
most important thing is that outward
Absolutely.
acceptance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And again, we can refer back to last week's session where I, said, like, if somebody sees the mug without the handle and they're like, oh, that person doesn't see the mug with the handle, I'm going to erase mine because maybe I didn't see the handle. Maybe they're right. All of those pieces. That's about rejection and acceptance and all those things. Yeah.
Lots of deep stuff here, folks.
Yeah. So do we matter? Does it even matter that we're doing this, you guys?
Matters to us.
Yeah, it matters to us. I think that it matters to you guys to a certain degree. And in the end, did we spend, an hour and a half of our time doing this, enjoying it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else could we have been doing? Probably lots of things.
Yeah. There's lots to be done today, right?
Yeah.
But we chose to do this because it's important to us. And the fact that you keep tuning in every week motivates us to keep doing it.
Exactly. And we also know that this is in line with one of the goalposts that are in our lives, right?
Yes.
Easy access, copy path, paste, shortcut.
And on that note,
I'm telling you guys got to look at that shit. Yeah. Season 3, hey?
coming
That's
to the
awesome.
end. I know, 3 years of this.
Yeah.
Thank
you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That's like 100 and some episodes, isn't it? Like 160
Easy, because we
probably?
were averaging about
50
between
or
30
so.
to 50 a season.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. More to come. We've got a few more left in season 3. So we'll be back next week with your next favorite episode. Until then, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jolene. Make that shit matter.